And we are live with episode 143 of the Start, Build, Grow Show. Randy Brothers, my friend, how we living?
We're doing well, man. You know what, though? I do want to kind of start we're from Colorado, right? And obviously some of the things that have been going on is just so, I don't want to, we're doing this podcast talking about business and all this fun stuff, but I do want to pay my respects and, have a quick little moment for all the people that have been affected by all the incidents and the things that have been happening in Colorado. It's been everybody here. It just hits us all to the core, and it's been a really tough few days. So, I want to start with that just to pay some respects to all the people and the families of everybody that's been affected by what's been going on in Boulder, first and foremost. So, quick little moment for that. Outside of that, it took 140 something episodes before our agents were finally able to connect and track down, and get Becca, who's like, roofing podcast royalty at this point, to get her finally on the show. I don't know how much money we owe you, but welcome to the show. Most everybody knows who you are. We've been watching your YouTube and social media for years, and we're grateful to have you on the show. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I'm sorry I'm such a lone wolf that hides in the Rocky Mountains.
So, Becca, we always like to start with the background. So obviously people know who you are, what you're up to, what you've been doing for the roofing industry for some time now. But how did you get into the roofing space? What's your background?
So after high school, I went to the University of Iowa for like 2 years. And after my sophomore year, I went home for the summer just to make money, for beer, basically, and to be able to pay for my rent. And so when I went home that summer, I was 19, I got a recruiting letter in the mail for actually Cutco Cutlery and for vector marketing. And so all my friends were like, that's a scam, don't do it. And my brother, I think, went to that interview, and it's like selling pots and pans to your friends. I remember one of my friends saying, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna go check it out. And so I go and I got my first direct sales job ever at age 19. And over that summer, I made so much money as a 19-year-old. I mean, I made like 30 grand. And I'm like, I'm not gonna go back to school. I don't even know what I'm doing there, right? So
what were you doing though? Just out of curiosity. I mean, you just get into sales, right? And all of a sudden you make 30 grand, a 19-year-old in one summer. What were some things you were doing during that time that made you so successful?
Well, in Cutco, they always say follow the program, right? So I literally just full ignorance, like blind ignorance, did every single thing my manager said. If they said follow the script exactly, I was like, okay, so do that. I listen to everything so literally. Okay, if numbers the average order is this, and if you this many phone calls, you should this about and this about. And then I just did that without thinking, without asking questions, without trying to take any shortcuts, and it just worked. And then of course, how that goes, you're like, oh wow, I've mastered these basic fundamentals. Now I'm gonna put my flavor on it and really blow those results out of the water. So that's really what I did. I wasn't afraid. I just had balls. I wasn't afraid to ask for referrals. I wasn't afraid to ask for the order. I loved making money. So that was kind of the journey there. And after that summer, I'm like, go back to school. I was going mass communications and journalism, and I did love to write, obviously say very well because I write sales copy and stuff like that. But I'm like, I think I'm just gonna sell stuff. So I did that for like a year and a half or 2 years. And my former husband was actually my Cutco manager at the time. Well, he was acquaintances with somebody who was like the vice president of the second largest storm restoration company in the country at that time. And this guy, unbeknownst to us, was breaking off to start his own company. And he was just recruiting Cutco people super hard because Cutco develops these amazing managers and amazing salespeople and stuff like that through their program. All of that to say, long story long, one day I remember I was driving, I was in Kansas City because I was now selling knives in Kansas City. And I remember my phone rang and it was my ex-husband, and I answered, and he's like, hey, do you think you could sell roofs? And I'm like roofs? He's like, yeah. And he kind of gives me the rundown, like what this guy was kind of saying about it's like insurance work and insurance pays for it. And they are, the customer doesn't even pay for the job, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, probably. I'm sure if someone just tells me what to say. So packed up our stuff a couple months later. The first storm location that I went to was in Merida, Connecticut. So I went out there and was just tossed into the fire, like, hey, here's a stack of contracts, our burnt out manager, like running on Red Bull in like 3 seconds of sleep every night. He's like, yeah, listen, of course, knock doors for a couple days and then you'll get it. It's a numbers game. Just knock 100 doors a day. Like, that's literally what they said. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I had to figure it out from there. So that is how I got here.
I love it. So so you get thrown into the storm market. You said Connecticut. How was that? How was that first experience selling roofs?
Dude, it was a mess. Like, to be honest. So I got there at the tail end. Like, this was an old storm, okay? And so I think it was like I showed up early spring, and this had happened last spring. And this was a situation where basically no training. They were sending me to like clean up botched jobs, like where the other salesperson quit and disappeared or didn't collect the money or took the check. I had one of those. I'm like, what? Salespeople do that? So it was just like no rhyme or reason to anything. Just show up every day. And what are we going to learn today? What am I going to get into today? What can I pick up from other people? How many questions can I ask? I mean, that's really what it was like. So.
And how long did it take you to get moved? I mean, it sounds like you said, you didn't really have any training or anything like that, but how long did it get you to be like, all right, I'm pretty good at this. Like I'm moving and grooving now.
The first month was a real struggle. Like, I remember, and my ex-husband at the time was kind of taking the reins on that too, for whatever reason. And then eventually he was not doing very well. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just do it my way. Like, I've listened enough. I think I'll let me do it. So probably within a month's time, I kind of had a rhythm going that was working for me. And within 3 months, I was like, okay, I've really figured this out. Like, you shoot, you score, you shoot, you score. I'm a quick learner. Like, if I listen to somebody who's good, and my manager at the time, he was an incredible salesperson. So even though he didn't formally train me, I would just, every single thing that I could hear him say, like, I would just be like, okay, like, make mental note. Oh, that was good. I get why he said that, So I just listened a lot. I was a sponge. But probably 90 days, I mean, maybe even less than that, because I was only out there for 4 months and I ended up selling 65 jobs. So for a brand new person who doesn't know jack, I mean, that was pretty good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, so Randy, is that a similar situation when you first started knocking and selling roofs? Is that sound pretty familiar in terms of what Becca said, or what was your situation like?
Yeah, so we pretty much have the same story. I actually kind of got in a little bit differently. I actually was a general contractor, licensed, had my own business, and then I got into fire and water restoration, and that's kind of how I got exposed to the roofing business, and then took a little sabbatical and decided that I was going to go be an adjuster. So I was an insurance adjuster first, and then I started seeing all these trucks, these roofers pull up with big trucks, and I'm like, what's up with that? I want a big truck. I'm getting paid crap to rappel off of roofs and risk my life every day while these roofers just sit there and schmooze the homeowners and make all the money. I'm like, let me. So that's kind of what got me exposed to it anyways. And then I got an opportunity, I just called a guy I was in Austin at the time. I called a guy, in between deployments as an adjuster. The first truck I saw that had a wrap on it, I just called him and said, hey, I want to come sell roofs. Lo and behold, I had a pulse, so I got the job. No interview, just here you go. So that they were working out of a hotel. They gave me a binder with their pitch book, so to speak, and then they were paying for some sort of telemarketing leads, and then they said, go knock doors and we'll try to give you a couple leads here and there. I managed to sell a few roofs having zero support whatsoever. Shortly after that, I had a friend of mine call me and say, hey man, and I'm from Colorado. So he's like, hey man, I know you're in roofing. You've been doing the adjusting thing. We just got hit with a big storm in Denver. I can get you hooked up with this company and they'll pay you X amount of money. And, we can go, I'll get you hooked up with a job. I was like, what else we got to lose? 2 days later, packed up, strapped my bed to the top of my truck and drove 15 hours, lived in my truck. Like I had nowhere to go. And I just went out and started knocking doors. My training was similar. It was pretty much, here's a stack of contracts. Here is here's a box that you can grab some trifolds to show people materials, and good luck, go knock doors and figure it out. What I started doing is I was like, okay, who's the best, right? They had 50, 60 salespeople. Like, who's the best salesperson? Well, these 2-3 guys are really good. They've been here a while. Great. I just made friends, and I just was a sponge, just trying to learn from them anything I possibly could.
Yeah.
And my God-given ability to connect with people, it doesn't hurt, right? I'm not shy.
Right.
I'm willing to kind of do whatever it takes. And I was broke. So I was like, I didn't have anything to lose. I'll go talk to anybody and do anything to make a couple dollars. And that's how it happened. We went out the first day. I grabbed my little brother and was like, hey man, if you go knock doors in front of me, I'll come in and sign contracts and we'll go make some money and I'll pay you whatever per job. And we signed 12 deals that first weekend, first Saturday. And I'm like, I think I could do this, and never looked back. Similar thing. We did 60, 70 contracts within the first couple months, and about 1.3 million in the first 5 months I was selling roofs. So
nice.
Naivety is bliss, right? Just going after it, and then spent the next 10 years trying to perfect the system and make it duplicatable and repeatable for other people.
Right.
I love it. Started from the bottom, now we're here. So a very similar approach with both you guys, right? Be a sponge. Both you guys did not have the training, the support, but listen to people that were doing well and were a sponge, right? So if you guys have not checked out Becca either, make sure you go to roofsalesmastery.com. I put the link in the comments as well. Now, our main focus is going to be how to boost your closing ratio and increase your claim size. So for the people who are just getting going, right, and they are knocking doors, what are some, door knocking or tips or approaches that you think people should be working on to find success, just like you guys did?
Who's first?
Becca, we'll go with you first. Then Rands, you can close her out.
You're the master, right?
Yeah, the master right here. Let's go.
So door knocking. So the first thing is, this is probably my number one tip in the beginning. Obviously, you have to have a good pitch, but what I've found is people need to, one of the biggest obstacles I think when people start door knocking is they're nervous as shit. And that's just weak. It's kind of it's like when kids sniff out another weak child, they just want to bully them. And customers are the same. If you are just meek or nervous or being passive or anything like that, it makes it very easy for that person to just close the door or be like, yeah, no, thanks, right? So my first tip is fake it till you make it. I remember learning that in Cutco when I had to ask for referrals. I'm like, so you want me to ask these people for their friends' names and phone numbers right now, 10 people, right? And so I was like, well, and my manager's like, yeah, fake it till you make it. Just act like everybody does it. So the first thing is your attitude needs to be this is no big deal. I'm here because everybody says yes. Obviously, duh, a hailstorm hit your neighborhood. You probably have damage. I don't care if you put me on your roof or not, but it would make sense to. That kind of has to be your attitude. Not don't be a dick, kind of a little bit, but just be it's no big deal, super confident. What time works for you is essentially, instead of, do you want an appointment or would you like an inspection? It's we're doing inspections this time, come over this time or that, right? So the second thing would be, this huge for me. Instead of asking yes or no, this is the basic sales. And instead of asking yes or no, do you want an inspection or re-inspection or has somebody look at your roof, just state that you're getting on the roof. Ask them what time works best. So I never did the try to get on the roof right in there thing, because I knew, okay, if I'm out here for 2 hours today, I could either do 2 appointments. Maybe there's damage, maybe there's not. Maybe they sign, maybe they don't. Maybe it gets approved, maybe it doesn't. I was like, all right, I'm going to knock for 2 hours, line up 10, or 8 or whatever, and then come back the rest of the week and do those. That's how I did it. So instead of asking, do they want inspection? I'd be like, go through my spiel and then say, so does 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock tomorrow work better for you? And then now they're either going to pick a time or they're going to give me an objection, but it's usually not a standard objection. They're not going to say, they're usually just so what is this? And then I say, yeah, it's not a huge deal, but there was a big storm that came through. I'm sure you remember, a couple weeks ago, there were a lot of tree limbs down. Maybe you noticed your neighbor's car right there has some dents on it, stuff like that. there's a lot of roofs out here in the neighborhood that had some damage on them. The roofs are mostly the same age in the neighborhood. You might not have any damage, but it's always better safe than sorry. So I just come out and I do a free inspection. I hop up there. It takes me like 20 minutes. If you don't have any damage, I just come down and let you know, like, you're good to go. I'm not going to tell you you'd have damage if you don't. But if you do, I'll take pictures, come down, show you what's going on, and then I'll let you know what to do next. So does 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock tomorrow work better for you?
I love it. I love the role play too, where you're actually running through what you be saying. I love that. Thank you for doing that. Now, one thing before we go over to Randy, you mentioned this a couple times, and we were going to actually have this as a topic: is how to get referrals. You mentioned in the front end that you weren't too scared to ask for referrals, right? Is there any kind of magic sauce with the referrals, or are people just not asking appropriately and just don't have the right approach or confidence with it, or what's the issue there?
This is one of my favorite topics. So one of the biggest problems is people do like hey, they give them a stack of business cards and say, if you know of anybody who needs a roof or would like a free inspection, make sure you have them call me. And then of course your customer is like, yeah, of course, absolutely. And then guess what happens to those business cards? They go in the washing machine or they go in like the junk drawer with the Bed Bath & Beyond coupons, never to be seen again. And I'm not saying it doesn't work 100% of the time, it doesn't work, but of course you're going to get referrals sometimes, but you're not closing referrals. So I challenge people to, instead of just making it a passive, like, hey, if you think about it, you close your referrals, you're asking for the order, just like you would ask for a signature on a contingency. So here's what I always like to do. First of all, first and foremost, before anything else, build a fantastic relationship with your customers. They need to love you. Like, I was getting invited to barbecues, to hang out at the pool on Sunday with my customers. Like, they would dog sit my dog for me if I had to go out of town for the weekend, stuff like that. That's the kind of level that you should be building with your customers. Like, actually touch base with them, connect with them as a human being, not just as a salesperson. And when you do that and it comes time to refer you, they're stoked to do it. And so here's what I used to do. I would say, so Mrs. Jones, so we'd get down to the end, right? I'm getting the customer completion form signed, stuff like that. And I would carry around a stack of I would do Target and Starbucks gift cards. And you can do whatever you want. You can do Walmart or the local gas station or something like that, like a gas card. But I'd say, so Mrs. Jones, now that everything is done, or Mr. Jones, whatever, how do you feel about the whole project? Like, are you happy with how everything looks? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, it's so cool. I'm like, and isn't it sick that you basically got an extreme makeover home edition on your house, like a $15,000 job for $1,000? And they're like, yeah, that's right. Like, remind them how cool of a deal it is, right? And they're like, yeah. And Mrs. Jones, if you had to recommend anybody to get their roof redone, would you recommend me? And they're like, oh, of course, you're great. I'm like, cool. Well, what do you like more, Target or Starbucks? Oh, I love Target. You can't go in there with you go in to buy tampons and you buy like new mascaras and no tampons. You're like, right, exactly. Okay. You're like, well, I'll tell you what. I've got a $20 Target gift card for you here. And you hand it to them and they take it. So now you've got this reciprocity thing going. And you go, all you have to do is one small favor for me. Are you down? And they always say yes. And you go, so here's the deal. There are a lot of homes out here that have been damaged by that storm, like thousands of them. And obviously, we can't get to everybody, but it's such a sweet deal to be able to get this makeover on your house for such a good price and all that stuff. I personally hate knocking on people's doors. Like, it sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I hate bothering people when they're trying to watch Game of Thrones or eat dinner with their families, when they're finally relaxing after work. But unfortunately, like, the name of the game in this business, people don't know they have damage unless I physically go to them. So I've got a gift card here for you. Who are 2 people that you know in this area that maybe haven't had a free inspection yet? Just write their name and numbers down. If they have me over, great. If they don't, no big deal. But this gift card is yours. Just write them down. I'll give them a quick call and see if anyone's looked at the roof. And what I do is I have a notebook that I keep that has names and numbers written on it anyway. And by the way, if you're listening and you're like, but I don't have any, make them up. Just write some random names and notes. It doesn't matter. Give the notebook. So what that's demonstrating is like, oh, people do this all the time, obviously, okay? You give them the pen, you shut up. And you wait and they write them down. And if they're having trouble for some reason, I'm like, who do you know who lives on this block? Who do you know from your kid's school? Who do you know from sports? Who do you know from work, church, blah, 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 blah. Just give, these little little, what do you call them, mind joggers or whatever. And if they do it really quickly, be like, Mrs. Jones, got to be honest, that looked almost too easy. Tell you what, the Starbucks one is yours too. If you write down 2 more, hand it to them. Boom. And I've had people empty out their church directory, their neighborhood directory, roster for sports. I'm not kidding. You have to do it like that, right? So that's what I did. Worked really nice.
Easy money. I love it. Rand, what do you think about I mean, we can talk about some of the door knocking stuff, but what do you think about the whole referral situation? Do you think that enough people are doing it effectively out there?
No. Are they doing it effectively? Absolutely not. I mean, proof's in the pudding. Everybody gets taught to door knock, right? It's an expectation. But if you build a brand that's so badass that before people even get to the neighborhood, their phones are blowing up, what's wrong with that? Why not try to build a brand like that? And that's my objective, is like, I came up here, I hate door knocking, but I have to do it. I got to live. I got to survive. We figured it out. Like, we have to do that. Everybody gets trained on it, but we also work all year long on our referral programs, and all the things we're doing to try to build those relationships that then refer you business the second an opportunity presents itself. So we came up with like a point system. So we have a system in our, I mean, shoot, you can take this, whatever. Look at our website, but we have a referral rewards program with a point system. So a homeowner can, if they give us a referral, they earn 1 point. They can turn around and turn that point in instantly, as long as a person, it's a qualified referral, as long as they buy a roof from us or they get a claim from us, they get $250 for that first point. Or they can save those points up and redeem them for larger gifts. I mean, we have people that save up 10, you earn a vacation for 2. So we built this pretty sophisticated system. There's a lot of tracking and back end crap you got to deal with it, but you can kind of simplify it. $100, $200, something. Money, people like money. I mean, this day and age, we don't cover deductibles. You can't cover deductibles. Don't do that. It's this is a terrible way of doing business. But I can sure as heck give somebody a gift card for helping me get another job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we'll do that with the gift card. Same as like what you're doing is, we try to have it as like a qualified lead. But before I had all this sophisticated system, I would just ask them right then and there. I would try to catch them in the moment, just like you. I love the gift card thing. I'm gonna use that. But I would literally just say right after I sold the deal, I'd be like, hey, do you know anybody else on your neighborhood or family or friends or somebody that could use the same, that hasn't got a roof done or whatever? Hand them the notebook, just like you said. Hand them a notebook and say, can you write down 3 or 4 of those? And if you don't mind, if you write down 3 or 4 people, I'm going to go ahead and give you a gift card or take X amount of money off the job or something like that to get them incentivized to go and do it. You'd be surprised at how many people are like, sure. It's funny when you get somebody who, what the best thing is when you get a client that you just connect with really well, and they're like, I know all my neighbors. I'll go knock their doors right now. Awesome. You want to earn $1,000? Here you go. Go ahead and give me 4 deals. And they literally you'll walk down the neighborhood with the homeowner, and they'll literally just walk you up to the door and say, hey, this is, so-and-so with so-and-so roofing. I'm working with them. Here you go. That's the ultimate goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something I'll add to that too. So the reason I started doing because our company used to do kind of a similar thing, Randy, where it's like, oh, we'll give them $250 for referral or $100 or whatever it was. I don't even remember now. But what I realized was people would rather have $20 now than $200 promised later. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was just rolling off. I was like, Dave, this is costing me way less money, and I'm closing it on the spot. I'm not having to wait and hope that they do end up sending me referrals. So it was kind of that's how I leapfrogged off of that approach.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, so the next sales item I want to talk about, and then we'll do a quick thank you to our sponsors, and then we'll kind of finish it off with negotiating with adjusters and getting OMP and stuff like that. So maximizing the claim. So the last thing on the sales side is objection handling, and what tips we have for objection handling, and how we can do some on the spot closes. So. Beck, if you want to start us out, I don't know if there's maybe there's certain types of objections or certain particular objections you want to focus on and kind of go from there.
So when it comes to objections, the first thing is, when is the best time to handle an objection? And it's before it comes up, right? So when you're thinking about whether it's your door pitch, your actual closing pitch, or whatever it is, you have to, and this kind of comes with time, but you pay attention to like, okay, what do people usually say? Whether it's thanks, but I think I'd just rather call my insurance company first, or my husband already looked at it, or whatever it is, right? You have to understand why they say those things, and then you can give them information in the beginning, like before they would even have that objection, that would completely eliminate that objection in the first place. Like, it would be silly for them to bring up that objection because you already covered that information. And one thing that I teach to my clients is, an objection to me is the client is giving you their truth or their answer right now based on the limited information that they have. So because you have not educated them on XYZ, whatever it is, they're coming up with something like, yeah, I think, we're just going to wait. I just rather pay for it out of pocket, or, right? Like, there could be a number of different objections that they don't want their insurance rates to go up, or whatever. They feel bad because their roof is old, or they like their agent, or whatever. So you want to build into, whether it's the door approach or your sales pitch, all these little bits of information that are going to prevent the most common objections that you would normally hear. So when you get an objection, this is what we learned in Cutco, and I still use it today. Most people, they call it headbutting the customer. They get an objection, and instead of like running with that objection to bring them back around, they're like, well, no, that's not, they give some sort of a resistant answer. And what you want to do is agree, yes, but feel, felt, found, and then ask again. So if somebody says, like, for example, thanks, but my husband already looked at it, you're knocking on doors, and you go, absolutely. That's the first thing I always say. I would go, absolutely, Mrs. Jones. And I totally get that. My dad is like a jack of all trades. He prides himself very much on being handy and being able to fix stuff and things like that. But what he did finally admit to me was, when he got on the roof, he is a doctor and not a roofer or a storm restoration contractor. And I stood there and I could see what was going on, but he poked around, didn't really see anything. And then eventually he said, well, what do you see? And I said, well, do you mind if I show you? And I showed him what I was looking for. And he was like, holy crap, I never would have, I just thought that was like foot traffic or something like that. And finally he admitted, this isn't really my profession. Maybe I should leave it up to the experts. And so, Mrs. Jones, I totally get that. And if your husband looked at it, I can appreciate that. What a lot of the neighbors have found is it's better safe than sorry. It doesn't cost you anything. And I'm not going to tell you that you have damage if you don't, because that's a huge waste of my time. I'm not a roof salesman. I just do insurance claims. So, and then you ask again, right? Like, does this time or this time work better for you? We'll check it out. He can hop up on the roof with me. I'm happy to show him exactly what I'm looking for, right? So you're agreeing with them and you're like, yes, absolutely. Of course you'd feel that way. And I can completely understand why. But what I found was blah, 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 feel, felt, found, ask again. So I do that with everything.
I love it.
They got to make a new decision based off new information.
Bingo.
Right? That's exactly what you're trying to get to.
Yep.
And I think you touched on it earlier, and this is really, really, I think the nuts and bolts of it is, one, understand what the main objections are ahead of time. That's why you need, a program to follow. They're going to teach you all this stuff, right? These are the objections, and you're going to build your presentation or your approach, your pitch, to filter out those objections to minimize the objections, right? So what are the three biggest objections? I need to think about it. I need my spouse to help me make the decision, and I need 3 bids, right? Would you say those are probably the top 3?
Yes, and then also I'd like to talk to my insurance agent. Like, that's another one that happens. Or, and you already said, yeah, I'd like to talk to my spouse about it. So all of those are like, okay, how can you, like the spouse one, that's my favorite. Salesmen come to me all the time and I go, okay, well, when do you think you should have handled that? And they're like, they never have the right answer. And I say, okay, well, when you were at the door and you set up the appointment, that's when you should have prevented that objection, because you should have.
Where I was going.
Right?
Like, never. That's a cardinal rule.
That's a sin.
Day one, we teach people never have a one-legged appointment.
Right.
Both decision makers there. Boom. That eliminates that objection. Ask them early on. When did the storm happen? How long have you owned your home? How long have you been thinking about remodeling? How long have you been thinking about replacing this roof? Right. Well, I didn't think about it until 2 weeks ago. Now you just eliminated the I got to think about it. Right. And now it comes down to, anything else before you actually pitch them and give them a price or charge the deductible or talk to them about whatever the close is. it's going to be probably more of a valid like reason, and you just need to talk more, educate them more. After you've given them a price, after you've given them, you know, the deductible or whatever, try to pre-close or set the close up. 9 out of 10 objections, no matter what comes out of their mouth, it's a price objection.
Right.
They didn't like your price, so you didn't provide enough value to justify the price you're charging. So you got to just know what you're, you know, what you're going to say to justify that price, and we'll work on that. That's a whole nother episode of how to do that, right? With financing and all the different options you have. But eliminate those ahead of time. Insurance, your presentation, like I would rather teach, like the most important thing that I teach our you know, my salespeople as well as people I coach is the insurance piece. If you can explain the insurance process to a homeowner to make them feel comfortable to understand it,
yeah,
you eliminate that objection. Like, we're in our presentation, we're going to explain 3 bids, what that means, why you've been conditioned, why you're supposed to get 3 bids, why I would get 3 bids on my deck if I was buying a deck, and explain all that, and explain why you don't need 3 bids.
Right.
You know, in this situation, you've eliminated the top 3 objections before you've even tried to close the deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think of
this? So here's one. That one we hardly ever get, because the insurance agent is the one who sent us there in the first place.
Yeah, so let's bring that up though quick. So we had a comment, right? Another one is the insurance company referred me a company, and since I trust my insurer, I think I'm going to hire them.
Be that company.
That's a good. Yeah, they prevent the objection, right?
Yeah, basically. And you know, I want to give a quick shout out to some people. We got Nate Ellis. He says, "What's going on? What's up?" We got Ben here, who used us on the Roofing Insights show. He was talking about sales there. He was doing a great job. We got Latif. We love Becca Switzer, great guest. We got Dave Carroll with Dope Marketing. We got Jake Nix. He was just working with a lead on some stuff, right? He's crushed. We spent the weekend with him. We got Ray on here. Hey kids, how's it going? We got Tyler Winters. Grateful for your impact on our team. That's about you, Becca. So that's pretty cool. We got Julie out here with Tribeca Roofing. Love roof sales mastery videos. We got Greg Wood, BS in the house. We got Nuggets. Jake Nix, he's been all about the gift cards too. So he says those Starbucks gift cards work great. Rachel Iverson in the building with SFY. Man, how did I miss the first 10 minutes of Becca? So we got some peeps in the house saying what's up. So I think we're going to take a quick break here to thank our sponsors. And like I said, then we'll go more into increasing the claim size. But as always, we got our headline sponsors, Job Nimbus.
Job Nimbus is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn about the #1 back office system in roofing.
We can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
So if you have not checked out Job Nimbus, make sure you check them out, right? It's a CRM that Randy built Elite Roofing on. You can check them out at info.jobnimbus.com/roofing-academy. And I know that Becca knows what's going on with our next sponsor, Sumo Quote.
I love Ryan Shantz.
Are you looking to stand out with your proposal? Sumo Quote is the contractor quote that crushes the competition. It is the fastest way to build custom quotes that impresses clients and wins more work. It's one of those must-have technologies for roofing contractors, allowing them to sell faster, sell more, and sell smarter. Be sure to check them out at try.sumoquote.com/start-build-grow. All right, Becca, I cut you off. You go ahead. Sell Sumo Quote for us. How great is Sumo Quote?
Well, I cracked the joke first. I was like, I love Ryan Shantz. He's Canadian, just like me. That's how.
Oh, for real? Okay. I didn't even know you're Canadian.
I am. I'm from Newfoundland, Canada originally.
Yeah.
But no, I honestly really love Sumo Quote. Like, he constantly is working on it and making it have new features, new integrations, and it really makes presenting, whether it's retail or insurance work, it's like an Apple process. Like, that's what I always tell people. Like, it makes it like an Apple interface where everything's clean, pretty. Mm-hmm. You can toggle options on and off, like showing different prices, giving your good, better, best bid if you're doing retail, like to provide your own 3 bids. It's all it's so great. It looks really professional. It looks really clean. It's so pretty. I love it. So if you don't have it, you should. It's going to make things way easier on your salespeople too. Like they'll just look so professional.
Amen to that. And like you said, Ryan is the man. And so for our final, but last but not least sponsor, we got Company Cam.
Stop driving job site to job site or texting and emailing photos. Know what's happening across your business. Get started for free today.
Get started for free today. Why wouldn't you check them out at companycam.com/SBG show. Now back to the show. All right. So let's say you boosted your claim ratio, or your closing ratio, right? Sales are doing great. Now it's time to be making sure that you're focusing on that claim size. So Becca, I mean, how when you start working with people, how effective are they being in terms of maximizing that claim size?
Before I teach them?
Yes.
So people are all over the board, right? I talk to people who are like, I think I know everything. I don't know if I should spend the money on your program. And I talk to people who like, I know, all I know is to ask for some water, OMP, and I know I'm leaving a ton of stuff behind. And then there's everybody in between. So what I firmly believe, and I've been proven to be true about over and over and over, no matter how good you are at supplementing, if you can agree that there's even one item, one thing that you're losing $100 on every single claim just because either you don't know about it or you don't know how to get the adjuster to say yes to it, then take that number times however many claims you're doing as a company. 250 claims times $200. Someone's gonna have to do the math. I don't know what that is. But let's just say that it's $200 on 100 claims. That's 20 grand, right? Is it? I'm so bad at math. That's 20 grand.
You're right. 20 grand.
Okay. Thank God. So, but here, the thing, I have my nootropics, right? So, but 20 grand, that's on a tiny, tiny, tiny scale that we're talking about here. 20 grand is like half of somebody's salary in the office, okay? Or a new truck or whatever, okay? So that's the first place. And if you're so arrogant that you don't believe there's something you can make $100 more on each of your claims for, then no one can help you, but everybody can, right? So I love teaching supplementing because that was where I really kind of got excited about doing roof sales because, you know, door knock, unless you're Ben Menchaca, shout out Ben Menchaca, door knocking is an arduous, like, shitty thing to do. Nobody likes doing it, right, for the most part. But what I realized was, I'm like, okay, when I understood what supplementing even meant, because again, I was just tossed into the fire, I'm like, all right, if I want to make twice as much money, there's two ways to do it. I can either knock more doors, spend more time, get more deals, you know, basically just double my sweat equity. Or what if I could just double my commission on each job? And I was getting paid 50% commission after, you know, 10% overhead and 50% profit or split, right? 50, 50, 10, like a lot of people do. And so I was doing the math and I was like, okay, so if I have a $10,000 average job that's 30% profit, let's just say, and I make half of that, let's just call it $1,500. Okay, but if I get a $4,000 supplement added to that, now the profit is 50% at $7,000 and I'm making $3,500 on the same job. And I spend what, 30, 45 minutes in the air conditioning in my sweatpants, typing on the computer. Sign me up, add to cart, okay? So I started just like playing around with it. And again, nobody really taught me. I mean, I had to teach myself Xactimate. I didn't know what supplementing was. I didn't know anything about adjuster objections except that they didn't like to pay for stuff. So I just started trying things and I caught on, I figured out patterns that worked and I just dug through Xactimate and I figured out all these line items that nobody else in the office seemed to be asking for. My understanding of supplementing when I got started was overhead and profit, discrepancies on squares, right, measurements, ice and water shield, and flashings. That's all anybody was asking for. And so I'm like, well, what about all this other stuff that's in Xactimate? I was just like looking up random keywords and finding things. I'm like, I could justify that. That's real. This is real. And then reading all the descriptions, I'm like, well, this doesn't say that includes this. So I just started having fun with it. And it got to the point, like, I remember one week, this was still my first year, okay? Or no, maybe this was my second year now. This might have been my second year. I turned in like $110,000 just in supplements. And my boss was like, what are you doing? Because my commission check was like $22,000 that week. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm supplementing. And he goes, can you teach everyone else here how to do that? Like your jobs are like 50, 60, 70% profit sometimes on these dinky little like 15 square, 20 square roofs. I'm like, okay. So that's where the fun began. And then I obviously throughout that process realized like, I bet people pay me a lot of money to teach them how to do this because this reduces the time spent working, but increases your profit margin. So I love to supplement.
Yes, I love that. Randy, what do you think about supplementing? And then we'll start to go into some deeper questions here because I know your thoughts on this.
I used to be an adjuster, and when I used to storm chase as a salesperson, I had to do all my own supplementing. But I hate supplementing. I don't have the patience to sit there on hold and do in front of the computer and type up. But I learned like I used to have to do sketch. Anybody know what that is? Sketch on Xactimate. I used to have to sketch these big cut up roofs, and I was pretty good at it. But you have to be like pretty much an architect to use that product. But so I knew all about it. I was an insurance adjuster, but for me, I just personally, I didn't like it. Like I just didn't like the process of having to go through that. So I made sure to find people who were really good at it and hire them to do it and pay them or whatever to do it, which in my mind allowed me to go sell more roofs. So you're used regardless of your physical involvement, supplementing is a must. I track these numbers like religiously, and we average over like the last 2,000 claims are probably over 23% increase on every single job. So you take 1,000 jobs and add 23% to that. And if you're not supplementing or you're doing not a thorough job of supplementing, look how much money you're leaving on the table. And here's the question. You mentioned this earlier about the small items. So, and dealing with roofing contractors of all different sizes, you're just trying to get going, cash flow is king. Cash is everything. So you have to make a conscious decision of, am I willing to put the time in or even sacrifice time for margin? And I believe there's actually kind of a fine line as to how far you're going to push for that $100, or is it enough of a margin to know that you're still profitable? Is that you got to understand the time value of money. Is the money better off in my pocket right now to where I can invest in other things, or am I willing and able to wait the time out to make the higher money? So once you get to a certain threshold, cash is king early on. But once you get to a certain point, you need to know that, hey, I'm willing to wait a little bit longer, because if I wait a little bit longer on 100 jobs, I just add 30 grand to the bottom line of my business. So be conscious of that decision from a cash flow perspective as you're trying to build and grow your business.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about the conversation that you should be having with an adjuster, right? I mean, how do you go about the negotiation techniques and the conversation with them?
Me?
Becca.
Okay. So there's a couple things. Well, there's a lot of things. But the first thing is, one method that I teach in my program is this very assumptive approach. And so obviously I'm not going to give away the keys to my castle here, but there's an email script that is in my advanced sales and supplement training program. And I just started doing it and it worked. And so I just did it over and over and over every single time I sent a supplement. So it's just like, I put together my Xactimate supplement, right? With all the supporting photos, documentation, make your case. You're a lawyer here, right? Like put together a good package. But then what I would do is I have this short paragraph that I email to the adjuster. I try to really not get on the phone, and I'll explain that here in a second. But I would email it off, and the paragraph would just make it sound like somebody over there at Nationwide had asked me to send a revised estimate, okay? So how it reads is like, yeah, here's, the requested Xactimate for claim number, blah, blah, blah. I included all the things you asked for. Like I literally say shit like that, even if they didn't ask me for that. And I go, let me know if you need anything else. Thanks for helping us process this one. And so obviously it's more detailed than that, but that's the gist of it. And I send it off and then follow up every 24 hours. Hey, I know you guys are busy. I'm sure you're swamped up to your eyeballs, blah, blah, blah. Just wanted to check up on this one. The homeowner's a little antsy to get their project done, yada, yada, yada. So the reason I don't get on the phone and I avoid it at all costs, is for a couple of reasons. One, if there's a paper trail, adjusters are a lot less likely to blow smoke up your butt. Okay. Like if they're on the phone, they'll give you objections that just straight up aren't true, because who's going to call them on it? Let's just say that you did have to go to the Department of Insurance, or there was a lawsuit or whatever, who knows? But on the phone, they'll just say stuff like, oh, it's State Farm's policy not to pay for that, so we don't pay for it. And you're like, plus you're on the spot then, everybody, you can get flustered. You don't even know exactly what to say, but they're not being held accountable that way. So I always make sure everything's in writing, because that forces them to sometimes just not lie. And I hate to have to say that, but everybody knows that that's the truth.
Yep.
Right? So there's that. And then dealing with it is, I always talk about the teamwork approach. Like, too many contractors, even though I know Jake from State Farm is a dick, all right? We hate getting on the phone with T92 or whatever number it is today, but we have to approach it like, hey, dude, I know you're just doing your job and I'm just doing mine, and I'm no better than you. We both just have families we have to feed and kids who want new iPhones, all right? So we're approaching it like that. And instead of being like, you owe us for this, blah, 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 even though that's how you feel inside, you have to be like, hey, how can we get to where we need to be on this claim? Like, I see that this, and this is involved, and here's why I'm asking for these items. Like, here's the documentation. How can we get this approved? So you got to really keep your cool. You have to assume the sale, and you have to be patient and persistent.
Mm-hmm. And I actually listened to I think it was a YouTube video they had up that you almost have to kind of treat them like your customer, right? You can't just go in with your customer and then just kind of expect it as a closed deal, right? Are people kind of doing that in a way where they're almost just kind of like, hey, no, you owe me this, and kind of going into it with that attitude?
They try to leverage, right?
No lube.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I am dinner first. Geez. So yeah, absolutely. Like, what I always tell people is, when you're supplementing a claim, you're really presenting, it's a sales pitch. So think about it like, let's reverse back. You're visiting a homeowner for the first time, and you want them to sign a contingency. You want them to buy the deal from you. You're not just going to walk up to them and then the first thing you say ever upon meeting them is, sign this piece of paper and I'm going to get you a roof. And then you sit there, nobody's going to sign, right? Nobody's going to sign. Why? Well, it was a crappy sales pitch. You didn't get them you didn't close them. You didn't give them any information. You didn't sell them on it at all. You just asked for the order. And when you approach an adjuster, it's really the same thing. You don't just go, hey, you guys need to pay for blah, 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 and then be a dick about it. Like, that's what a lot of people are doing, unfortunately. Or maybe you're not being an a-hole, but you're not schmoozing them at all. You're not selling them on why they need to say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So your job is to make it as easy as humanly possible for them to say yes to your requests. So you're selling them on the line items you're asking for. You say, hey, here's this claim. I included these pictures. You can see in diagram A, blah, blah, blah. I highlighted this. Here's the code from the county that shows that this is required, and blah, blah, blah. You've got your photos, your documentation, your language definitions, your screenshots from the Xactimate line item description, whatever it is, okay? And then you say, for those reasons, we have to add this to the claim. I'm sure it was probably just overlooked by the adjuster. I know those guys are like, we're overworked, So here's everything you need. Let me know if you need anything else. Boom. So you're doing a sales pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind here, like the premise of everything we're talking about. This is a human to human interaction, and we have to build relationships every step of the way. And business, one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Business is only done one way if it's going to be successful long term, and that's win-win. Approach every conversation as a win-win situation, not a I'm better than you, I'm going to leverage you, you owe me this. It's not. It's just like you said, we both have jobs, we both have an objective, we both have families to feed. Let's come to agreement that makes sense for both of us.
Absolutely.
Everything should be approached that way.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy, I'll add something, a little anecdote to that to just prove that point even further. So when I first got into like figuring out the supplement stuff, I even remember the guy's name. His name was Nick. Can't remember his last name, but he was an adjuster at Nationwide. This was years ago. And I, just through email, just because I did such a good job putting my stuff together, making it easy for him, and I was cool, I'd just be friendly in emails. Like, you could tell how I wrote it, even the energy's pleasant, right? So I got to a point where with this adjuster, even if he was not the desk adjuster to these claims, because there was a ton of nationwide claims in this market that I was in, even if it wasn't his claim, I was sending him dozens of nationwide claims, and he'd be like, yeah, this one isn't mine, but it's cool, I can process it. And that happened so many times just because he enjoyed working with me. So that is possible. Like, here's something that I hear all the time. Contractors will say, well, I don't want to get a reputation with these adjusters if I run into the same adjuster over and over, blah, blah. I'm like, well, that's on you. Like, you're going to run into adjusters all the time. That can be a good thing. They like you. They know that when you ask for something, you're asking for it legitimately. You can back it up, okay? You're not just the other Tom, Dick, and Harry that's saying, you owe me O&P and register, blah, blah, blah. You're asking for different stuff. You're legitimizing it. You're validating it. You're being cool. You want to run into the same adjusters over and over with that because they already know you know your stuff.
I love it. I love it. Well, all right. Well, as we start to bring this thing to close, Becca, we appreciate you joining us for sure. It's been awesome. You brought some amazing information. We always end it with a golden nugget. So I make Randy go first, right? So a golden nugget that you want to leave the viewers with. It could be something to avoid, something to implement, you know, a lesson that you learned. It doesn't really matter. It's just a closeout item, something to leave the viewers with. Randy, for the 143rd time, what's your golden nugget?
So usually I always want to try to correlate to the show, those sort of things. And there's a lot of energy to the show today. I love it. And Becca always brings so much energy in what she's doing, you know, but one of the underlying things that helps someone like her and yourself be really successful in everything they do is all about attitude. Right. And the reality of it is if you look at your surroundings, your day-to-day life, the things that happen to you, there's one thing you can control. That's it. That's your attitude. That's the outlook. That's the way you approach each and every day. You know, things happen, ebbs and flows in business happen all the time. You got big highs, big lows. You may have the biggest sale in the world today and you may get denied 12 times tomorrow. But what you can control is your attitude. Always go through to everything and go into every day, into everything you're trying to accomplish with the right attitude and totally believe in what you're trying to accomplish, and you're going to find success.
Love it.
Thank you, Randy. Love it. All right, Becca, close it out.
So I think what I'm going to give you guys today here is just a tip for, honestly, it can be salesmen or managers, but how to get off kind of that emotional roller coaster, because when you're in charge of your own results, everyone knows it can be like ups and downs, right? Like one day you're feeling great. You're like, I can do anything. And then the next day you're like, have I forgotten how to do my job, right? So one thing that I always tell people is to focus on a defined action plan instead of just your results. So like when you set a goal for the year and maybe you're a salesperson, you say, I want to sell $1 million this year. Instead of just keeping your eye on this $1 million landmark that's way off in the distance, it seems like you're never going to get there. Break all of your stats down. What's your closing percentage, your success rate at the door, your average order size, blah, blah, blah. Break that down so that you know, okay, each week or each day, all I have to do are these actions. And then the law of averages is going to take care of you for that. Okay. So, and that just eliminates, like, I love that tip because I know what the ups and downs are like. And if you're riding that constantly, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to not be able to get out from under the covers some days. So focus on the actions. And it's like, all I have to do is knock 75 doors this week. And then you knock those doors. And whether the week went well or not, you go, if the week didn't go well, I know that next week, if I knock 75 doors again, I'm probably going to have a better week than I normally have. And that's just kind of how it goes. I find that to be a really useful tip because it just takes you out of your head and just puts you into focusing on making movement forward.
Absolutely. Well said. And like Randy was saying, Becca, thank you so much for joining us. He brought the energy today. It was a great episode. And if you guys want to check her out, go to roofsalesmastery.com. Like I said, the link is in the notes. But other than that, everybody, thanks for joining us on.
Make sure to subscribe.
There you go. Make sure you subscribe.
Everybody,
listen to Randy.
If you're listening, we obviously do film this show live.
Yes.
We are making a change. We're switching to Tuesdays from Wednesday to Tuesday, starting next week? Is that right?
Yeah, Randy wants to go race his car, so we're switching to Tuesday.
What can you do? I need Wednesdays open for race night. But if you are listening to the car, we do film live. If you want to check us out live and kind of, I don't know, I'm not much to look at. Nick, he's a little bit prettier, and
Your
guests like
beard
Becca
is
are
great,
good.
though.
So, but if you want to check us out live, we're on Facebook, the Start Build Grow Show. You can like the page, you can subscribe, you can a comment came up. You can actually click the little button that says notify me when they go live, so you get notified when we go live.
Mhm.
And if you're watching us live, you can download past episodes on YouTube and on all of the podcast channels to listen in your vehicle. So we think we have pretty much everything covered.
I think Randy covered it
Can't
there.
get enough with the Start Build Grow Show.
Absolutely.
We're on everywhere. So.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us in episode 143 of the Start Build Grow Show.